At this age, I thought I knew the line between kindness and crossing it, until he stepped into our home, and everything suddenly felt blurred and unsettling. A warm and heartfelt welcome to Heartbroken. Welcome to our community. If you're new here, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and show your support for this video by giving it a thumbs up. In a matter of seconds, we discovered a spark that fueled our desire to create more stories. Please express your gratitude for this video. And now let us begin our story. Never could I have foreseen that I would find myself in such a predicament. In a charming little town, I devoted my early years to cultivating dreams of a life brimming with simplicity and happiness. In the vibrant days of our youth, I pledged my love to my college sweetheart, Daniel, a bond crafted in the glow of our mutual dreams and ambitions. Even with our limited possessions, the connection we held was a priceless gem, and that was more than enough. That was the conclusion I had drawn. Looking back, the signs of what was to come have revealed themselves to me. In that instant, I found myself utterly unable to comprehend it. As we stepped into the charming little house we had decided to rent, I was introduced to Mr. Alden, our landlord. Though the abode may not have exuded opulence, it encapsulated the very spirit of our connection. It exuded a delightful warmth, featured a quaint garden, and boasted a charming little backyard that truly captured my heart. As we stepped into this new chapter of our lives, Daniel and I were filled with an exhilarating sense of anticipation. Mr. Alden was a gentleman of considerable age, embarking on the early chapters of his 6th decade. His face glowed with a gentle warmth, a smile consistently gracing his features in our meetings. He was the kind of landlord who would sometimes pay a visit to make sure everything was in order with the house. The memory remains vivid of that first visit when he came to repair the broken fence. He displayed an impressive level of courtesy, asking if we needed anything, and continually partaking in casual dialogue about the changes the neighborhood had experienced over the years. In that moment, it scarcely made an impression on my thoughts. He was simply a kind, elderly gentleman. Slowly, the current started to change. As Daniel's professional obligations drew him away from home more often, I found myself increasingly navigating the stillness of the house on my own. In those fleeting moments, I began to view Mr. Alden through a different lens. He began to appear unannounced with growing regularity, sometimes to scrutinize the house, other times merely to partake in dialogue. At first, I regarded it as harmless. In the end, he bore the title of our landlord. As the days progressed, I began to perceive a delicate shift in the cadence of our conversations. On a tranquil afternoon, while I nurtured the blooms in my backyard garden, Mr. Alden arrived for an unanticipated visit. His visits had become more frequent, and though I welcomed his company, there lingered an unsettling aura to his arrivals that I found difficult to dismiss. His kindness enveloped the room, but beneath that warmth, an intensity flickered in his gaze, igniting a subtle unease within me. On that particular afternoon, he stayed longer than usual. Our dialogue wandered through the nuances of the weather, paused to appreciate the garden, and eventually plunged into the complexities of existence itself. In those ephemeral instances, I began to sense a unique fascination in his manner. "Is there a sense of joy that you discover in this place?" On that day, he asked, his eyes fixed on me, evoking a deep sense of vulnerability. My response was shrouded in uncertainty. Indeed, a wave of happiness washed over me in Daniel's presence, yet an unmistakable gap started to emerge, especially with his long hours at work. There were instances when solitude wrapped around me, even with him in the house, yet I hesitated to articulate that reality to Mr. Alden, not openly. I gave a smile and a nod, trying to brush the thought aside. But Mr. Alden was relentless, unwilling to let it slip away. He noted that, at times, it is all too easy to underestimate the importance of having a confidant, to miss the authentic feeling that arises when someone is genuinely listening. Words slipped through my fingers, but the way he spoke them sent a chilling shiver down my spine. His words lingered in the air, resonating long after he had left. I brushed it aside, persuading myself that it was nothing more than a minor interaction. As Mr. Alden continued to visit, I started to notice subtle shifts in his behavior. His compliments, once playful and unburdened, began to carry a weight I was unaccustomed to. He would comment on my appearance, observing the care I took in presenting myself and the diligent attention I devoted to maintaining the house. At first, I viewed his actions as simple acts of kindness, but it soon became clear that he was sensitive to nuances that others overlooked. On a certain evening, Daniel was not present, as he was occupied with a business trip. On a serene evening, I was comfortably settled on the couch, lost in the pages of a book, when out of the blue the doorbell rang. Taken aback by the unforeseen arrival, I hesitated briefly before replying. As I pushed the door ajar, there stood Mr. Alden, radiating a warm smile. "I find myself in the vicinity," he said, "so I thought I would stop by and ensure that all is well." I bestowed a polite smile, stepping back just enough to grant him passage. His unexpected appearances had settled into a familiar pattern, causing me to scarcely ponder their significance. He stepped into the living room, and our dialogue began as it always did. On this particular occasion, an unusual tension lingered in the air. There was a shift in his demeanor, subtle but unmistakable. It unsettled me. It was nothing overt, just a fleeting look and extended gaze, yet it was enough to set my heart racing wildly. In the course of our dialogue, Mr. Alden drew closer to me than was his usual custom. The space that had once kept us apart started to shrink, and the weight of his presence became ever more palpable. I remember laughing nervously at his remarks, trying to brush aside the growing discomfort that lodged itself in my heart. I comforted myself with the notion that his actions were simply expressions of camaraderie, persuading myself that my responses were overblown. Yet, as if sensing my discomfort, Mr. Alden leaned in slightly and placed his hand gently on the arm of the couch. "You know," he remarked, "it's a rare occurrence to meet someone like you, someone who truly listens, someone who sincerely cares." At first glance, the words seemed innocuous, but an unsettling quality lingered in his tone, an inflection that sent a shiver down my spine. An overwhelming desire to withdraw surged within me, a need to voice my unease, but still I chose to remain mute. Instead, I released a nervous laugh and pulled my legs up to my chest, trying to create a barrier between us, even if it was just a physical one. Mr. Alden noted the shift in my posture, and for a brief instant, an unvoiced tension lingered between us. He looked at me, his eyes soft, but there remained a sharp intensity that I could not ignore. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Your gratitude is genuinely cherished. Elena, you embody a distinctive and extraordinary spirit." The manner in which he spoke my name rendered me momentarily speechless. My heart pounded in my chest, rendering me speechless. I longed to speak, to break the heavy stillness that surrounded me, but the perfect words slipped through my fingers. In that moment, I was captivated and rendered motionless by the heavy hand of time. Before I could even speak, Mr. Alden stood up. With a smile reappearing on his face, he said, "I suppose I should allow you to return to your evening." Yet, an oddity lingered in the smile, an elusive quality that slipped through my grasp of understanding. "I felt compelled to connect and inquire about your well-being." I nodded, my throat dry, watching him as he left the house. With the soft click of the door closing behind him, I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding. I sat still, my eyes locked on the door, while time appeared to elongate endlessly, wrestling with the perplexing occurrences that had just transpired. Never had I encountered such a deep and unsettling conflict within myself. A part of me longed to share my inner turmoil with Daniel, while another was trapped in shame, paralyzed by the fear of how he might judge me. I never meant to cause any problems. I sought to steer clear of sowing any seeds of uncertainty in his thoughts or, even more troubling, inciting his wrath. As I continued to reflect, it became ever more evident that I could no longer ignore the feelings Mr. Alden was awakening in me. It seemed amiss, and I was devoid of any inclination to nurture it. An unsettling intuition persisted, hinting that his visits masked deeper truths he opted to keep hidden. What was I supposed to do? As the days unfolded, Mr. Alden's visits became more and more habitual. Each time I returned, the same unsettling tide of discomfort and unease surged through me anew. I tried to brush it aside, but it became ever more challenging to ignore. He had a mysterious allure that quickened my pulse, leaving me bewildered about its source. I recognized the importance of being careful, knowing that I had to prevent situations from getting out of hand. Yet, I felt that beneath the surface a change was subtly taking shape. I had no inkling of the profound depths that lay ahead of me. As the days transformed into weeks, the tension between Mr. Alden and me grew more palpable. I had not yet confided in Daniel about the strange encounters I had with our landlord. A part of my essence quivered at the mere notion that he might fail to understand my intentions or, even more terrifyingly, that he could react with fury and disillusionment. Ultimately, I was simply trying to offer a gesture of goodwill, wasn't I? It was nothing more than a light exchange of words. Is that all there is, then? I recited that mantra to myself each time Mr. Alden showed up at the house unannounced, trying to push away the growing sense of unease that was slowly taking hold. Nevertheless, the unease had transformed into an unmistakable force that I could no longer ignore. The memory of Mr. Alden remained vivid, especially the moment our eyes locked and the fleeting touch of his fingers against the armrest of the couch during that one extraordinary visit. It seemed he was extending a hand, striving to create a connection that went beyond the usual confines of neighborly or landlord-tenant interactions. That moment kept resurfacing in my mind, each recollection amplifying the tension within me. On a tranquil Tuesday evening, I found myself alone in the kitchen, carefully slicing vegetables in anticipation of dinner. Cooking had always brought me joy, but tonight it felt more like a weight than a comfort. My thoughts drifted to far-off lands, an uneasy sense of foreboding tugging at my consciousness, as if the very atmosphere crackled with the anticipation of transformation on the horizon. As I started to dust the chicken with spices, the familiar sound of the doorbell resonated in the atmosphere. My heart danced within my chest. As I peered through the kitchen window, I caught sight of Mr. Alden at the door, his well-known warm smile illuminating his features. Days had slipped by since I last beheld him, and though relief ought to have enveloped me, an uneasy knot coiled tightly in my stomach instead. With a towel in hand, I dried my hands, took a deep breath, and made my way toward the door. "Good evening, Elena," Mr. Alden said with a bright tone as I opened the door. "I hope I'm not interrupting any current affairs?" "Certainly not," I replied, managing to conjure a smile. I stepped aside to allow him passage, and he entered with a nonchalance that implied it was the most commonplace action conceivable. He glanced around swiftly, his eyes briefly settling on the kitchen where I had been immersed in the task of preparing dinner. "The aroma in here is delightful," he said, his gaze resting on the dish I was crafting. I received the compliment with a courteous nod, a sense of uncertainty washing over me as I pondered my response. "It's just a simple dinner, nothing particularly remarkable." "You always say that," Mr. Alden chuckled, "but you have a remarkable talent for transforming the simplest things into something truly extraordinary." The compliment was agreeable, I suppose, but it bore a distinct significance when it originated from him. It was a different kind of admiration than what I had garnered from friends, or even from Daniel. His gaze carried a weight, as if he glimpsed something within me that went beyond the simple worries of food or a roof over my head. A tide of discomfort surged within me again, but I resolved to push the feeling away. "Thank you," I replied, brushing it aside with a casual wave of my hand. "Do you need anything? It seems you have arrived with a question in mind, am I correct?" Mr. Alden's expression shifted ever so slightly. He seemed to hesitate briefly before responding. "I would appreciate the opportunity for a short discussion. It has been a while since we last partook in a significant conversation." To my utter surprise, our meetings had consistently been characterized by courteous interactions, yet we had never paused to delve into a more profound conversation. I knew he often lingered nearby, but I hadn't expected him to seek a deeper dialogue. An overwhelming wave of anxiety washed over me, but I nodded nonetheless. "Certainly, we can pause for a moment to share this space together." I led him into the living room, subtly gesturing towards the couch, encouraging him to settle in and feel at ease. As I settled into the familiar chair, I found myself facing him, a ritualistic scene reminiscent of countless evenings spent with Daniel, immersed in our shared television escapades. A tense silence settled over the room until Mr. Alden shattered it, his voice imbued with the gravity I had never experienced from him before. He began his journey at a relaxed tempo. Of late, I have been immersed in profound contemplation regarding the essence of existence and the unavoidable changes that manifest as time progresses. It is all too easy to find oneself caught in the repetitive patterns of everyday existence, drifting away from the genuine essence of what truly matters. A sense of ambiguity hung in the air as I contemplated the path he was choosing to follow. With thoughtful reflection, I acknowledged your viewpoint. In the midst of life's chaos, it often proves difficult to remain connected to what is genuinely significant. Mr. Alden tilted his head, his eyes searching mine intently. Exactly. Yet, it is just as important to take a moment to pause and reflect, making certain that we are truly engaging with life instead of simply going through the motions of a routine. His words bore a disquieting gravity, rendering me speechless in the face of a response. My thoughts were shrouded in uncertainty as I contemplated his insinuation, and a fragment of my being hesitated to reveal the truth. "Elena," he whispered softly, leaning in just a fraction closer to her. "It's challenging to express, yet from our very first encounter, an unmistakable bond has formed between us, a distinct connection that remains ever present in my mind. Time and again, I find myself pondering our conversations, the way you carry yourself. Your extraordinary nature is simply ineffable, and my respect for you is profound." A sudden constriction seized my throat, stifling my breath. His words enveloped the listener in a soft embrace, while simultaneously echoing with the profound significance of a newfound truth. The way he spoke those words struck a chord within me, though it was anything but a comforting feeling. An unexpected surge of confinement enveloped me, casting doubt on my forthcoming actions. My thoughts swirled, probing for the perfect words, anything that could alleviate the dense tension now palpable in the atmosphere. I find myself at a loss for words," I murmured, my voice scarcely lifting above a whisper. "I appreciate your kind sentiments, Mr. Alden, but I must convey that I am blissfully married. My heart is devoted to a husband I hold in the highest regard." He seemed completely unperturbed by my words. He leaned back in his chair, studying me closely for a fleeting instant, his expression an enigma. "I understand," he murmured, a trace of regret coloring his voice. "It is my desire to spare you any unease, Elena, but I find myself unable to dismiss the feelings that dwell within me." His words coursed through me, a spark of electricity awakening every nerve. Though I had heard him express his admiration for me before, this moment carried a unique weight. Within his gaze resided a profound depth, an intensity that conveyed unspoken narratives. A wave of dread and uncertainty enveloped me. This had moved beyond the simple curiosity of a friendly landlord. It had transformed into a labyrinth of complexity, one that left me feeling inadequately prepared to traverse. "I have no intention of creating any discord between you and your husband," Mr. Alden said, his voice unwavering. "Why, yet I can no longer ignore how much your presence stirs something within me, though I know it should not. I felt compelled to share my emotions with you." Words slipped through my fingers. I opened my mouth, but the words slipped away from me. I found myself in a precarious situation, caught between the urge to shield him and the necessity of steering clear of false hopes. What path was I intended to follow in this situation? How can I express to him that I am married and have no interest in pursuing anything outside of my relationship with Daniel? Finally, I took a deep breath, sensing my heart pounding in my chest. "Mr. Alden," I declared with firm resolve, "I value your candor, but I must be clear with you. I stand united in the bond of marriage, wholly devoted to my husband. Your kindness is genuinely valued. However, I must emphasize that my interest is strictly confined to the parameters of a landlord-tenant relationship." A prolonged stillness enveloped the space, and I caught the flicker of disappointment playing in his gaze. He lowered his eyes to his hands, then nodded with thoughtful intent. "I understand," he murmured softly. "I sincerely regret if my actions have brought you any unease. That was never my intention." I nodded, a surge of relief washing over me. The tension that once surrounded us seemed to dissipate, leaving behind a lingering sense of discomfort. The feeling remained an inescapable burden, that nothing would revert to its previous condition. Mr. Alden's feelings for me would endure, no matter how much I tried to face them. He stood up and I followed suit. "Thank you for listening," he said, his voice soft, carrying a hint of sadness. "I will take my leave now and wish you a pleasant evening. I wish for you to know that I deeply respect your boundaries, Elena. I merely seek to express the emotions that dwell within me for you." I forced a smile, striving to mask the unrest that lingered beneath the surface. "I expressed my gratitude, Mr. Alden." I acknowledged his departure with a courteous nod, hoping for normalcy to return. As he crossed the threshold, I paused for a heartbeat, staring into the emptiness he had vacated. A whirlwind of ideas churned inside me. The events that had just unfolded were utterly beyond my grasp. Even while bound in matrimony to Daniel, I discovered myself drawn into a dialogue with our landlord. What was unfolding, and why did it appear that my entire being was slowly unraveling at the edges? I shook my head, attempting to cast aside the persistent uncertainties. I found myself drawn to the essence of my life with Daniel, yearning to remember the love and commitment that once enveloped us. Still, an unyielding voice inside me hinted that this was just the dawn of something far more significant. After my conversation with Mr. Alden, I made an effort to push the whole situation from my mind. My resolve to maintain my relationship with Daniel was unwavering, and I had no intention of introducing any further complications with our landlord. Nevertheless, in spite of my attempts to mask my feelings, they remained, stubbornly clinging to my heart. The burden of guilt and uncertainty lingered, casting me into an endless cycle of doubt about the meeting. A few days later, Mr. Alden re-emerged in an unforeseen manner. A sudden wave of unease washed over me as the doorbell rang, shattering the stillness that enveloped the room. Despite my sense of unpreparedness for yet another awkward conversation, I recognized the necessity of addressing it head-on. I eased the door open, working to keep my composure intact. "Salutations, Elena." He greeted me, his voice warm yet deliberate. "I wish to connect and ensure that all is well with the house." I tilted my head, conjuring a smile. "Everything is in order, Mr. Alden. Thank you for your question." He seemed to hesitate briefly before continuing on. "I have been pondering profoundly over my earlier expressions. Causing you discomfort was never my aim. I recognize your boundaries and I respect them." I found myself compelled to articulate the thoughts swirling in my mind. I stared at him for a long while, feeling the weight of the words he had spoken. In that moment, I felt the necessity to stand my ground. Here, uncertainty found no refuge. "Thank you for your understanding," I replied. "Nevertheless, I feel compelled to be clear. I am in a marriage. I am fully committed to my marriage with Daniel, and I will not allow any distractions to disrupt this bond. While I value the professional relationship we have cultivated, it remains solely within that realm." Mr. Alden's expression softened, though a hint of sadness remained in his eyes. He tilted his head slowly, absorbing my words in quiet contemplation. "I comprehend," he whispered gently. "I sincerely regret if I overstepped any limits." I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of relief envelop me. "It is entirely acceptable. I would like to ensure that we are on the same page." He gave a subtle, courteous nod before making his exit. As he turned to leave, I remained in the doorway watching him depart, a tempest of feelings churning inside me. A flicker of melancholy resided in my heart, recognizing the importance of this moment, while simultaneously, a wave of gratitude unfurled for the boundaries I had so urgently needed to create. As twilight descended, Daniel and I convened at the dinner table, and in that instant, I felt a deep sense of presence that had slipped away from me for far too long. The recent events weighed heavily on my thoughts, but I recognized the need to move forward. I discovered a compelling attraction to the core of what was genuinely significant: the essence of my family, my steadfast dedication to Daniel, and the deep affection that intertwined our lives. "Is everything okay?" Daniel asked, noting that I appeared more reserved than usual. I gave a smile, trying to push away the nagging thoughts that lingered in my mind. Truly immersed in deep thought. Your return home fills me with joy." He mirrored the smile, his hold on my hand becoming a tender embrace. Returning to the familiar embrace of home brings a soothing warmth that wraps around the soul. In that moment, it became clear to me that amidst the tumult and complexities of human emotions, my focus was strikingly sharp. A deep sense of duty urged me to protect the connection I had with Daniel. With unwavering resolve, I was committed to ensuring that nothing and no one would hinder our journey, fully cognizant that, despite the obstacles that lay ahead, we would face them together.